Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic today, a fun one, a little spicy. Let's do it. What is the strangest cult out there? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Honorable mention for Heaven's Gate, although the members are now traveling via a comet with brand new shoes, no less. They still have their 90s era website up and running. My parents separately joined the Unification church in the 70s and were married in a mass arranged marriage by a Korean man who thought he was the Messiah. They didn't know each other before then. They had me and my siblings, and I had a really weird and confusing childhood. The Taiping Rebellion. In the 1850s, a Chinese man named Hong Ji-quan attempted to become a Buddhist monk but failed his first test. While studying to retake it, he fell ill and had a fever dream, where he claimed to receive a vision from God, and revealed he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ. He also claimed that there were evildoers in the Qing government that needed to be disposed of, so he formally formed a rebellion and launched a deadly 14-year-long civil war that killed more people than World War I. Eventually, he and his army were under siege at Tianjin, and many starved to death while trapped inside. Hong Ji-quan was so desperate for food that he literally ate weeds off the ground and thus died from food poisoning. There are so many more details that I didn't mention, but it gets absolutely batshit insane. The Ant Hill Kids. Their leader did some really insane shit to his followers. Cargo cults. Isolated tribes in the Pacific that thrived off World War II island airlifts. When the war ended, they recreated wooden bases and aircraft to try and bring the good times back. The Plymouth Brethren, exclusive brethren. Perhaps not the strangest, but an incredibly dangerous group, often just thought of as another denomination. There's a sizable group of them in Australia, the UK, New Zealand, the US, and a few more countries. The psychological damage they inflict upon their members or former members is devastating, particularly with regards to excommunication and separation from the world. It's also very misogynistic, homophobic, and racist. Many members are manipulated into thinking like themselves. They're forced into dressing in a very particular way and are prevented from many worldly things, including music, books, and television. They're an incredibly wealthy group, with most of their money funding the life of a likely Australian billionaire. The 12 Tribes communities are pretty toxic. I don't know about the exclusive brethren, but it sounds similar to the post here about them. They date only within the community, with some strict and weird rules. They own quite a few businesses that are employed only by members of the community. Then, the earnings are managed by the community rather than the individuals. They dress a bit like Quakers. World Mission Society, the Church of God, is a pretty weird Bible-based cult, very litigious in protecting their image, teach the doctrine of God the Mother as a core tenet of their beliefs. Branhamites are also a very curious Bible-based cult centered around the prophecies of William Branham, who taught strange doctrine, such as serpent seed, Eve had sex with snake, that he was the prophet Elijah, and gave multiple failed end-time prophecies. He died in the 60s, but his followers anticipate his resurrection. Shen Yun, and the Epic Times have ties to a cult called Falun Gong, and the show is a scheme to promote it. They believe some wild shit, like how you can't trust scientists because they are secretly working for aliens that want to take our bodies, and that you shouldn't have mixed-race children because heaven will be racially segregated, so it would impact their chances of reaching it. If you're interested in cults, listen to Time Suck by Dan Cummins. He covers a lot, and it's funny. He also covers everything else, like killers, historical figures, or events, or just vague topics with deep dive research that's well sourced. Unironically, QAnon, it's the only large cult where the cult leader, Trump, was never involved with the cult. People just made everything up on their own based on gobbledygook posted online. Seriously, read the Q drops. They are a total word salad. Once you've basically achieved all the main tenets of a cult and you're leading it or inside one, it's impossible for it to not be really weird. I can't think of a normal one at the top of my mind. I thought Heaven's Gate was really weird and eerie, where the members thought the comet, Hale-Bopp, was a spaceship coming to take them away. So they drank poison in matching outfits to board their ship. MAGA. They actually elected a fraudster criminal as president, and we all pretend that's normal, and they justify it because Harris apparently caused inflation all by herself, or women can't be president, or something. Okay? Look, I believe everyone has a right to their opinion, and I respect it. I can disagree with it and listen to your words and have a normal conversation. I hope that I get that in return, and it seems at times it's not always the case. So let's be civil and let's be realistic. Would you support someone just because they're under the banner of the party that you support, or the better equipped candidate? And I'm not just talking about this past election in the United States, but in any sense of that question, I ask you that. If you have the answer that I would disagree with, that's fine. But I would look for the best person, male, female, any race, creed, or sexual orientation, versus someone because I like the color of their hat. The cults of Yahweh. So at first, these nomads make a claim that some random local land is the promised land, and being allegedly enslaved by another nation, after the founder claims their God promised their sons great nations. After escaping captivity, they conquered the promised land with blood and R. Centuries later, there's a schism, where the splinter group says this one dude with 12 disciplines and a potential lover, oddly, with the same name as his mom, is the Messiah, their God in flesh. Well, the original group murders him. This group later goes on to R and pillage Europe and much of the world, actually. Then, centuries later, a third cult of Yahweh arises, claiming to be descending from the other son of the original founder. This cult later starts a military campaign in the Middle East to reach west across Africa. They also claim the Promised Land is theirs too, just like the two groups. They went on to create a slave trade that lasted several centuries, and only started dying out after they started selling slaves to the first splinter group in the New World. IP, not the restaurant. Some of the strangest folks out there practically own a city in Missouri, Grandview. I heard they bought up a bunch of houses and then housed a bunch of people and charged them excessive rent. They also have an indoctrination center they call a school. I worked there on a construction project, and they wouldn't let us use the entrances. They literally cut a hole in the back of the building and hung a temporary plywood door. The first day we showed up and went in the front and got yelled at and directed to the back of the building. Every day we went to lunch at local restaurants and fast food joints, and we noticed we were surrounded by their members as they talked incessantly about their cult. It was creepy. From a European perspective, everyone who brings identity politics into literally everything and everyone. No, not everything is about race, gender, and sexuality. We are more than just those labels, and people who are heavily obsessed with those things are creepy. Agreed. I'm so glad that this mentality doesn't even extend where I live, and I'm a minority. Honestly, these extreme Democrats I see on here are getting there, disowning their families, reporting illegal immigrants only if their families voted Trump, spreading misinformation and lies, wishing death and punishment on Trump supporters, having mental breakdowns, and blocking and downvoting anyone with differing opinion. It's wild to watch. There's a cult in Washington state where a woman says she channeled a 10,000 or something year old warrior named Ramtha and gives out wisdom. He also promised powers to anyone who can master his stuff. She had a huge campus behind huge gates with guards, and she's the worst kind of person. One time, we ended up talking with a guy who was in her security detail. He had a ton of insight. She has a lot of Europeans who move here to join the cult. And once they can't afford to pay the monthly dues, she kicks them to the curb. Then, being penniless, can't even make it home. So she generously offers to buy all their furniture, clothes, and goods for pennies on the dollar. Then she turns around and sells those items at her thrift stores. Absolutely evil woman. Collectivism. The presumption that a mass of people can do better at a specific thing than the person or people who specialize in that thing, and that they somehow have an obligation to turn over complete control of what they've built to the masses. The 12 Tribes. Originated in my hometown, and to this day we still have a yellow deli on our college campus. I spent many nights studying there because of their odd hours. Well, odd for Delhi anyway. They always tried to kind of get us to read about them. And when we disappeared to the back, and we got a new, older waiter.